This is episode 283 of That Shakespeare Life. Just like the work of William Shakespeare, That Shakespeare Life is supported by listeners just like you who sign up to be our patrons. You can play a direct role in supporting the work we do here by becoming a patron today at patreon.com/thatshakespearelife. That's patreon.com/thatshakespearelife. If you'd like to go beyond the episode and really try out some of the history you learn about here on our show, then consider becoming a member of Experience Shakespeare. Experience Shakespeare offers digital history activity kits that let you cook, play, and create your way through the life of William Shakespeare. Find out more at CassidyCash.com/member and stay tuned after the episode for even more details.
Hello, I'm Nick Humphrey, Curator of Furniture at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Another great method for studying the life of William Shakespeare includes listening to this. It's That Shakespeare Life with my friend Cassidy Cash.
The 16th century ball would have been and was leather, made from a couple of panels and stitched together with obvious seams on the outside.
Welcome to That Shakespeare Life with Cassidy Cash. Cassidy believes that if you desire to successfully learn or perform Shakespeare's plays, then understanding the real life and history of William Shakespeare himself is a must. That Shakespeare Life is the podcast that helps you go beyond the curtain of some of Shakespeare's most iconic works and explore the world of early modern England as Shakespeare would have lived it, learning from the writers, historians, and performers who know it best. And now, here's Cassidy.
In Shakespeare's lifetime, the game we call soccer here in the US, known as football in Europe, was a popular game for Shakespeare's lifetime. That's right, it was around for William Shakespeare. In fact, some sources say that the game of football was invented in England during the Middle Ages. These original forms of football were called mob football, or sometimes folk football, and would be played in towns and villages involving two opposing teams that would struggle by any means necessary to drag an inflated pig's bladder to specific markers set up at each end of the town where the game was held. Shakespeare mentions the game of football twice in his plays. Once in Comedium Errors, Dromio says, quote, "Am I so round with you as you with me, that like a football you do spurn me thus?" You have to feel bad for the football, the poor football being mistreated during the game. Then in King Lear, the Earl of Kent references football again, saying, quote, "Nor tripp'd neither, you base football player," end quote. So they're even slinging insults like you would hear from the stands in a soccer or football game today. That's fun to me, I think. One of these inflated pig's bladders was actually found intact in the rafters of Stirling Castle. This surviving football dates to the 16th century and could have belonged to Mary Queen of Scots. Here today to tell us more about 16th century football, the artifact discovered at Stirling Castle, and to share the results of his own scientific experiments comparing the Stirling Castle football to modern soccer balls, is our guest historian and scientist, Henry Hanson. Henry Hanson wrote a PhD thesis in football, or soccer, impact mechanics and dynamics in the Mechanical Engineering School of Loughborough University, and has bachelor's degrees in German and mechanical engineering from the University of Portland in Oregon. His current work in the Adidas Innovation Team comprises aerodynamics, mechanics, test machine design, and human product interaction to improve performance, accessibility, and enjoyment of sport. Outside the office, he runs, cycles, lifts, and always has a couple of science-based art projects in progress. You can find out more about Henry at the links in today's show notes. Hello, Henry. Welcome to That Shakespeare Life.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Soccer and football, obviously in Europe and in America, these are two very different games. From Shakespeare's lifetime, would the sport that he's referring to as football in his plays be more like European soccer or more like American football in terms of how it was played?
I think it would have been a good mix between the two. So I think the reference point that I have is in the middle of the 1800s, football and rugby kind of did a split when they started to make the rules, when the Football Association came into play. And so before that, it seems likely that there would have been kind of a combination of the hand-based rules and the foot-based rules. So somewhere in between, I guess. I've also heard it called a mob type of activity, a mob sport as well. So
yes, I've heard that mob football or even folk football, but basically some kind of combination of tons of people falling on the ball and trying to get it from one end to the other. So yes.
Yeah, by any means necessary, trying to move it. Yeah.
And not nice either. This is a rough and tumble sport for sure.
Yeah, dangerous.
Who was it that was playing football in the 16th and 17th century? I think, were there individual teams, or was there any kind of fan base or groups for each one? Did you have townspeople that were cheering for one side or the other, or was this just a kind of a kick-up game that people would do for fun?
It seems like it was a town-based thing, and those not playing would be cheering, but not necessarily kind of an organized team. Just kind of anyone who supports the cause of moving it from one place to another would kind of join in. So not really kind of picking, 11 aside or something. Another reference point. So it was banned a lot until, a couple hundred years ago, kind of banned on and off. I did read somewhere that it was one of the reasons for it being banned was that it would deter people from archery practice. And so this could have also been a sport for soldiers or people who would become soldiers.
Yeah, so they definitely wanted the strong, capable men of the town to be prepared for battle, and there were requirements about how much archery you were supposed to do, and if you were taken away from that by playing this game, I get the impression it was almost like a town fair, or we think about a parade. It was very localized in that way, where anyone representing the town would sort of pick sides and say, okay, I'm going to try and get the football from here to my side of town, and you're going to try and get the football from here to your side of town. And it was anything goes. So it was just the town kicking it up and saying, all right, guys, let's go out and do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just move it across. Yeah.
I was able to find a few 16th century woodcuts and drawings that depict this game being played from Shakespeare's lifetime. And in each of these images, you understand exactly why mob football was the phrase that gets used to describe it. Because in the pictures, and I will place pictures in the show notes for today's episode so you can see exactly what we're talking about, but there's a group of men and they're always gathered around a large ball. It's always men. I haven't seen a portrayal of the game that included women yet, but there's a large ball in the center, and clearly everybody is going after it. But what's interesting about the ball itself is that and I was able to find 3 different images, and in all 3 of these images, the ball itself has a seam clearly visible as if the ball had been sewn together. And Henry, I know you've done a lot of work on the physical football, and I wonder, is this image consistent with what we know about early modern footballs? Was it something that had been sewn together?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen some of those pictures as well. And there's one that comes to mind. It was the one I saw was colored. So maybe it was a colored wood block. It was also someone being wheeled away in a wheelbarrow. So,
oh gosh,
quite
ambulatory
quite
right
sport.
there.
Yeah, exactly. And the seams, I think it's a kind of an interesting thing to include in a simple drawing, to include a seam. It's not really a functional aspect of the ball. You normally don't see people including seams on clothing, on trousers or something. So it's kind of interesting that it's included on there. But the 16th century ball would have been and was leather, made from a couple of panels and stitched together with obvious seams on the outside. My work, and I guess the reason I'm here is I have done a little bit of work, research work on the 16th century football based off of one that was found in Stirling Castle some time ago.
Yes. And Henry has done extensive research on early modern footballs, specifically the one thought to have belonged to Mary Queen of Scots, which dates to the 16th century. And it was found intact in the rafters at Stirling Castle. Henry, tell us about your research and what have you discovered about early modern footballs, and what was your work trying to uncover when comparing those footballs to something like a soccer ball that we have today?
Yeah, so I kind of came into it on accident. At the time, I was researching modern footballs or future footballs at Loughborough University and the Sports Technology Institute. And we had just kind of a cold call from a historian with the Mary Rose Trust, who had created a replica version of the 16th century ball. So the one that was found in Stirling Castle. And he kind of came to it with just a question of you all research footballs. Here's an old one. What do you think of it? And so it seemed like a great opportunity to get involved in something a little bit different from my standard work. It was really great working with, so that was Mark Jones at the Mary Rose Trust. And he had also some historian colleagues who have contributed to the idea on the history side. Yeah, so we had this replica. It was made of, I guess, cow-based leather sewn with cotton thread. And the key ingredient missing when I received it was the internals. So the pig bladder.
See, I was going to ask, because they talk about it being a pig bladder that's being tossed around. I was wondering if there was actually one inside these leather panels.
Yeah, so that's what they think for the old ball. So for the 16th century ball, there's one, and it's in Stirling Art Museum right now. But looking at that one, they determined that the inside was a pig bladder. And I had heard that before, that they use pig bladders filled with air. I think it's also possible that they filled some with straw or other leather as well. And that filling, I think, can be indicative of the type of game that would be played with that. And maybe that's something we can talk about a bit later. So I had to procure, inflate, and install pig bladders into this leather skin to make the full testable prototype, I guess, of the past. It was an odd request for the abattoir, but they still gave me 4 pig bladders for, I think, 25 pence a piece.
I bet that was a fun phone call. Excuse me, but I'm going to need 4 pig bladders, please.
They didn't ask as many questions as I would have expected, and they gave them to me very clean. And yeah, it's an easy transaction.
Well, what were you looking for when you were, like, how did you know you would need 4 pig bladders? What was the premise of your experiment that you were setting up?
So I believed only one would be necessary, but I just needed some backups. And so I wanted to compare the 16th century ball, that construction, with what we have today. And clearly there are differences. I wasn't expecting anything to be similar, but it just was kind of a nice framework or something to use as a comparison. And I think there was one of the tests officially passed. The rest of them didn't pass the current standards for football tests, but it still gives a reference point that everyone can kind of relate to when they think of their experience with the normal ball.
And we will link to Henry's YouTube video where he demonstrates this experiment that he performed on the ball. It's very interesting. He goes through a series of tests on the balls and kind of compares them to modern soccer balls. And as you're mentioning here, Henry, the comparison does fall short of modern football standards, but at the same time, it demonstrates a primitive version of the same game. You can tell that this was functional for the purpose that it was intended in the 16th and 17th century.
Yeah, absolutely. And the end result was a fun object. After sanitizing the bladders, I kind of put them in, inflated them with the straw, and then tied it off with a piece of string. And the bladders fit well within the ball, which was, I guess, a good match. And in the end, it was like a fun kind of playful object. It was really lightweight. It was really bouncy. It wasn't round, so it was more the shape of a bladder, I suppose, which was a little bit more like a rugby ball. And because of that, it bounced somewhat erratically. So it was kind of a fun thing to chase around the lab.
Oh, now I can just envision scientists in a lab chasing a 16th century football back and forth. And that's fabulous.
Yeah, it was fun. And I guess I was kind of unexpected by that. I didn't expect that it was just like a little joyous moment trying to chase this thing around. After it was complete, then I kind of subjected it to the types of tests that we do on a standard football. And I followed the FIFA test standards. So there's kind of 6 or 7 tests. Yeah, made a comparison. So the tests are, there's one for rebound, so how high it bounces after a drop. There's a sphericity test and a diameter measurement and a water absorption. And I also did a kick with a robot leg as kind of the final test, because that one destroyed it. I mean, it failed most of those tests. I think the air permeability test was the one that it did pass. So it did maintain air pressure or sufficient air pressure for the 72-hour window. But the rest of them, it's not round. It doesn't bounce very high compared to a normal ball, and it's not super durable.
So we'd have to think that there probably weren't reusable soccer balls. These were probably created for the game they were intended to be played, and were probably spent by the time the game was over, given how violent the game was said to have been. So we would have to, I'm going to propose a hypothesis here that the football was probably recreated very often. These weren't ones that you would, keep in your foot locker and get back out later to play another game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The bladder itself dries out. I don't have a lot of experience dealing with organs, but it was a very kind of stretchy, and it felt actually quite durable. But after some time, it dried out and kind of had a paper-like texture.
Does it get brittle after it's dry?
Yeah. So not usable for a ball, but that can be replaced. So maybe after every few days or before every match, you would just put in a new bladder.
Inside the leather casing.
Yeah, and keep the leather casing.
who was it that would have been responsible for putting these together in the first place? I mean, was this something that was commercially available? You go and buy a football in a shop, or would individual craftsmen, maybe even members of these strung together teams, have been putting it together when they wanted to play a game?
I don't think it requires any special skills. I guess sewing, a needle, some thread and leather. I'd say it's more simple to make than a shoe, for example, or than a garment. So it could have been something an individual would have made. There was a record of a purchase. So this was in about 1500. King James IV, 2 shillings for a bag of footballs.
Oh, fantastic. So this would have been in Scotland because James IV is still in Scotland. Okay.
That's at least record of someone making a transaction for footballs. And I guess, royalty's probably not going to make their own anyway, but
well, I would assume not, but it's exciting to think that he didn't just go and buy one. He bought an entire group of them, a bag of footballs. So he was obviously planning to play with some regularity or in a group, because you only need one per game. So that there's a lot that you can infer from that one record. But speaking of it being the king that had ordered these, was football a game that would have been played at all levels of society? I mean, when we mentioned it being called mob football, I'm surprised that the king would want to play this. I would think it wouldn't be something that was played at higher levels of society just because of how messy and violent it was. I would assume they would want to be removed from that. What do surviving records about football tell us about who was playing it and what the reputation of the game was for Shakespeare's lifetime?
This might be where there's a split between the mob football and something that would have been played in the castle or by Mary, Queen of Scots, or royalty, because it doesn't seem like that would be a royal game. And also, like as we talked about earlier, it was banned for some times, and I think from what I've read, it's spoken of somewhat disparagingly by Shakespeare. So I think that the reputation may have not been great. So the 16th century ball, which is like the technical properties of that are my kind of entry point into the history here. That one didn't seem like it would be suitable for a mob-based game. So that one, it was good in a room, kind of, bouncy and playful, but not durable, not something that you could, like American football, you wouldn't want to be holding that. If you were tackled, it would just burst. And so this might be kind of a split in football. So they're like maybe a mob side, and then something that was a little bit more gentle, played more gently in a castle, something maybe more akin to hacky sack, or kind of like a garden game rather than a street brawl.
That goes back to what you were mentioning earlier about the various materials they would use to fill the pig's bladder, because I imagine if they filled it with straw, it's much less likely to burst on a tackle, for example. Yeah.
Straw or leather or something, and easier to hold on to as well. So the 16th century ball is about the size of a, cantaloupe or so, and it's very lightweight. So it's not something that you can grasp so easily.
Yeah, it doesn't have the finger holds like what we think of on an American football. Yeah. Now, I know there was this 16th century football discovered at Stirling Castle was obviously the basis for your investigations into comparing 16th century footballs with modern ones. But are there any other surviving footballs that date to this time period to inform what we know about footballs from this period?
Not that I'm aware. So I haven't seen anything for some time. But I mean, also they're all biological. so
they probably broke down.
Yeah, it's something that would easily degrade over time, and it wouldn't have much value after all the materials dried out. So,
do we know why the one at Stirling Castle survived? I mean, I read that it was found in the rafters, but does that mean it was behind a wall or sort of encased somehow to be protected from the elements?
Yeah. To my understanding, it was one of the reasons they're able to date it to that time period is it coincided with a documented renovation of the castle. So they say this is the last time this, in 1540 or so, this was the last time this particular room was repaneled, and so anything behind the panels is likely from that era. And so this was only discovered in the 80s, I think, when the room was redone again. Yeah, I guess the hypothesis is that it was lost and repaneled, and then kind of kept away from wind and air and rain for some time.
So quite literally a time capsule. And we've covered on our show before the idea that sometimes people would put objects inside the wall of their home or castle for superstitious reasons. So there could have been something to that as well. Now, I know
cool.
we would love to learn more about this topic and to explore the history and the science of what you've put together. Please tell us about where we can look for your science experiments or your YouTube video. Where can we find those? And then tell us where you would recommend that we begin if we want to explore this history further. What are some resources you can recommend we use to learn more?
Okay. Well, I wrote a conference paper for this that talks about the creation of the ball and the individual tests. It was for the International Sports Engineering Association conference. And then I also made a video kind of explaining that with some clips that I took during the time. Both of those, I guess the easiest way to mention that is my website. They're on there, which is hnryhnsn.me. So it's my name without some of the vowels. And you can find the video in the paper there. The ball itself is in the Smith Art Gallery and Museum, and they have a nice display set up there. I believe there's also some information in the Mary Rose Museum. So this battleship, very well preserved battleship, and I wrote a little kind of excerpt about the ball, and it might be at the museum still. But I think that both the Smith Art Gallery and the Mary Rose Museum would be good places to start looking into more information.
Absolutely. And there is information about this also at Stirling Castle, so you can find information there. But I will link to Henry's website as well as the video and where you can go and check out the ball at the Smith Art Gallery and Museum. And we'll make sure all of these links are placed in the show notes for today's episode. So stay tuned for the URL for where to find those. And we'll have it all nicely laid out there so you can go directly to the information you would like to find. Now, Henry, we ask everyone this next question here at That Shakespeare Life, and that's, what's the one book you would take with you on a deserted island? My friends in England tell me I'm supposed to allow you the complete works of Shakespeare and a copy of the Bible, so your choice would be in addition to those.
Oof.
We save the hard questions for the end.
I mean, practically, it might be a book on botany or some sort of kind of desert island survival manual that would tell me what plants to eat.
As a true scientist should, yes.
to be quite useful. I think a book I've enjoyed reading about science, To Engineer is Human, Henry Petrovsky. But I think if I had to pick something so the book I've probably read the most, and if it's a book I'm going to have to read for the rest of my life, would be something from Calvin and Hobbes.
Oh, excellent choice. That is the first time Calvin and Hobbes has made an appearance on our show, but I'm going to have to second that as a great choice if you're stuck on a deserted island.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? What are you working on now that you're excited about?
Well, I worked recently on the 2026 World Cup football. I'm still kind of involved in football engineering and research in my current role. So it's nice to have that connection still.
Yeah. And you're talking we're going to say European football, or are you working on the American football?
Yeah, soccer.
Oh, fantastic.
Soccer.
My son plays soccer, and he will be glad to know that the people responsible for making sure we have a very safe football came and visited with us on our show. That's very fun.
Oh, great. Good.
Thank you so much for being here, Henry Hanson, and taking us through the history of Shakespeare's football and soccer for his lifetime and what that would have been like, and helping us to understand this surviving artifact from Stirling Castle. This has been a really fun conversation, and I appreciate you being here to share it with us.
My pleasure. I've enjoyed the discussion. Thanks.
Now, I promised you I would pack a lot of extra visuals into the show notes for today's episode, and I have. You can go to CassidyCash.com/episode 283, and there you will find links directly to Henry's website, more about the science of sports mechanics, as well as the video of his experiments into the football at Stirling Castle and some of that robot kicking and different tests that he did to compare what the football from Shakespeare's lifetime was like compared to modern soccer balls. It's a lot of fun soccer history. I've also included the woodcuts and the artifacts showing exactly what 16th century football looked like for Shakespeare's lifetime. So you can find all of these visuals and artifacts packed into the show notes. Again, that URL is CassidyCash.com/episode 283. That's CassidyCash.com/EP283. Now, if you'd like to go beyond the episode and really try out some of the history you learn about here on our show with your hands to really get a piece of it and bring it home to your classroom or just right into your kitchen, then you should consider becoming a member of Experience Shakespeare. Experience Shakespeare offers a collection of hands-on history activity kits. These let you try out things like 16th century Tudor soap balls, playing the card game of Naughty, or learning how to play bowling, which was another popular game along with football from Shakespeare's lifetime. We tie them in with the plays where they are mentioned, and we give you all of the information you will need to perform these activities at home. The kits come with tutorials, supply lists, and instructions, as well as bonus history guides. So it makes it really easy to take these activities into your study of Shakespeare's plays. Or if you're a history enthusiast, it just makes the play so much more fun because now you understand the different things that they're talking about. If you like the idea of diving into the 17th century and getting to try out some history for yourself, then join us inside Experience Shakespeare, where you can cook, play, and create your way through the life of William Shakespeare. Sign up today at CassidyCash.com/member. That's CassidyCash.com/member. That Shakespeare Life is powered by our patrons. We are able to do the work we do here each week of researching and connecting with the guests and bringing you the world's best Shakespeare history every week, all because our show is supported by listeners like you who sign up to be our patrons. Patrons get an inside look at the making of our show, and they get to participate in creating that Shakespeare Life with suggesting topic ideas, sneak peeks at upcoming guests, and they even submit their own questions to be asked during an interview. If you enjoy learning history with us here each week and want to play a direct role in supporting the work we do here, then sign up to be a patron right now at patreon.com/thatshakespearelife. That's patreon.com/thatshakespearelife. That Shakespeare Life is researched and produced by me, Cassidy Cash. Our audio engineer is Gary Mayholm. That's it for this week. Thank you for listening. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to That Shakespeare Life. As always, the best conversations happen after the episode over at CassidyCash.com. Become a part of a vibrant Shakespeare conversation by adding your voice over at the website. Until next time, remember, when you want to know William Shakespeare, you have to go behind the curtain and into That Shakespeare Life.